And this morning, of course, we'll be turning our attention to the all-important subject that has been at the epicenter of debate in the country. At some point, even the president coming to deny that there is a collateral damage with regards to the debt from China, and we'll be putting that into perspective on the roundtable. This morning, joined alongside my co-host Linda by Ben Kinuthia, lawyer and political commentator. Thank you so much. Good morning, Ben. I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
It's another happy Monday.
I'm happy to
and
be
the
here.
biscuits have come back.
I hope
I love
viewer is able to see that.
Ajana Mosetti joins us for the first time. He is a political commentator too, and the Orange Democratic Movement youth leader, and your Secretary General. Good morning, Mosetti. Said
morning,
that no longer NASA does exist.
No, I think it does, but political coalitions are soon dying. Maybe we can use that statement.
Including Jubilee?
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you so much. Linda, thank you.
All right, there you go. And I think basically what you've said, this discussion has been ongoing for quite a long time. And I mean, lots of fears have been raised as to the question of the SGR and how far, and whether it's actually, how far we're headed with it, and whether it's a blessing, and, you know, the implications that come along with us getting the SGR, you know, as an asset, infrastructure asset in the country. And, you know, this debate has been there. There was something that was highlighted in the Daily Nation on Sunday, was it on Sunday or Saturday? And also the story continues, yesterday, and I mean today it continues. The story right here where we say that the scramble to repair SGR debt, a Damaged Nation report yesterday on how secret pact between Nairobi and Beijing on the funding of railway line put Kenya's asset at risk, sends officials scrambling as a media tour of second phase of project called off. And I think you've all heard President Uhuru Kenyatta coming out in defense of, you know, us acquiring the SGR and, you know, the intrigues about it. And I think that's basically where we're going to start the conversation from. That today, as we speak, we've probably been waiting to see whether President Uhuru Kenyatta is going to give us, you know, a copy of the agreement that was there between Kenya and China as to the SGR. Of course, the spokeslady, that is Kanzadena, came out strong to say that she is going to give that, you know, in the course of the week, and we're crossing fingers to see that. But even still, the nation has highlighted very crucial things that then I'll let lawyer Ben Kinuthia, you know, give us intrigues of it in us trying to understand, you know, some of the nitty-gritties of the agreement, because we're talking about the question of the insurance, we're talking about the question of arbitration, you know, clauses, we're talking about, you know, the binding laws behind this, and of course the level of the management of the loans as we speak today. The key thing that I would want us to start with before we even get into the details of it, because I mean, I want to believe every other Kenyan is alive to the existence of the SGR and some of the nitty-gritty details about it. But the question of this arbitration and, you know, the binding laws that come together, I mean, it looks like they have sort of, you know, pushed or suppressed the Kenyan beat more than, you know, you would definitely expect, Ben.
Okay, a very good morning. I think this is a very interesting legal debate, because from the onset, a contract has many things. A contract has got parties to a contract. A contract has got arbitration mechanisms, and not just arbitration mechanisms. One of the things that is provided for in any contract is, in the event that there arose a dispute, how would this dispute be resolved? Would you go to court? Would you have something called mediation first? Would you have arbitration? And if you were to have arbitration, I am lucky to have gone through on top of my legal training, there is something called the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in the UK, and I'm a member. And one of the things we have gotten to learn is there's something called the seat of arbitration. The seat of arbitration simply means that when there's a dispute, where is that dispute going to be resolved? Is it going to be resolved in Kenya? Is it going to be resolved in China? Is it going to be resolved in Japan? And whenever you have parties to a contract, you can choose a neutral and independent seat of arbitration. And I think the makers of this contract could have made a mistake. I haven't read it. I don't want to speak like many people who speak and, you know, thump their chest and say, I know and I'm aware. But what I would say, if I was sitting in the board that made this contract, one of the first things we should have negotiated for is to have a country that is known to respect the rule of law, probably a Commonwealth country, as an independent seat of arbitration. So that in case there's a dispute between Kenya and China, the seat of arbitration will probably have been the UK or another nation like South Africa, or whichever other nation you choose, where you feel that the laws of that country allows you to have equality before the law, and you are able to negotiate and get out of that situation with something. But having said that, what did the Chinese give us? 350 billion. Is our nation worth 350 billion? I think Kenya is worth a lot more. And so when we are going to bargain, we shouldn't be coming to bargain as if 350 billion is the beginning and the end of this nation. This nation is worth a lot more than 350 billion.
Just before, of course, we come to Ayub and Mercedes, it's very crucial that we understand. I mean, when we're talking about the contract, and what has it that because then we're just dealing with something that we are not really clear about until that particular time we're going to get a copy of the contract. What has it that this is not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be laid out to a third party? In your own opinion, or in a legal understanding, do you suppose Kenya, the people of Kenya, at large, would be considered as third party?
I think there's something called the privity of contract. Privity of contract is where now it means if Ayub and I have an agreement, a third party is any other person who is not part of that contract, who does not belong to that contract, and who has no interest in that contract. But having said that, Kenyans have, there's a principle in international law that says the sovereign doesn't make a mistake. And what has happened is that we sent out our head of state, or whoever it is that has been elected, to go and represent us in the making of that contract. So when they were signing that contract, he was signing on behalf of all Kenyans. So we have an interest as Kenyans, and as a citizen you can move to court and say you demand for a release of that contract. You want to know the basics and the intrigues of it as a Kenyan, because you have locus standi, and locus standi means is you can be able to stand before court and say I demand to know what is contained in that contract because it affects my life as a Kenyan, and because it has, I'm paying taxes and so on and so forth. So locus standi, yes, we have, and we can be able to go to court and demand we want to be that contract to be availed for Kenyans to be able to peruse through and to see and to understand. But I think also in the making of future contracts, the people we send out there need to be more realistic, and they need to give us contracts that we feel in the future, if they were revealed to us, we are happy with them. After all, we are paying the debt.
And then from the realistic point, let me just pick up on the most important aspects here, because it appears that there is a chain of the events corroboration here onwards from the scandal at the National Land Commission. Let me come to you, Anyona Moseti, on this particular note. The second phase of the SGR, because the first one is not underperforming at the moment, and we'll point out why. But one of the people that Ben did mention, who signed these things on behalf of us, who normally accompany the president, is the CS for Treasury, Henry Rotich. He sits at the helm of the power control machine in the country. And this is what he said. Just listen to his bravado. Where did you get such information from? Send me where you got it from, because I'm not aware of such a thing. It's an expose and such irresponsible statement. Are you worried?
Treasury Cabinet Secretary also came out to say, that is Henry Rotich, and equally President Uhuru Kenyatta came out to say that these are just mere allegations.
I mean, surely, first of all, we shouldn't be blaming the president for all these things that are going on. Because from where I sit, I understand that the presidency, even if you go to the United States or any other country in the world, you realize that this is just like a symbol of national unity, and the moment he sits on that seat, he should be able to employ the right people who should execute the jobs perfectly well. So the people, Kenyans should be really questioning are the likes of Rotich, because if you've been given a job and you're paid by the taxpayers, then you go and borrow debts, and again, we need to understand that every country at least has a debt. We cannot
including
survive,
the United States,
including China itself. China, which gave us a debt, it also has a debt. So the problem emanates when we bring this debt into the country, then we misuse it. We don't use it accordingly the way it was meant to be. And strongly speaking, I think these people who have been hired, I mean, you've seen how cabinet secretaries are running this country. The likes of education, Amina Mohammed. Today she says this, tomorrow she says this. So I strongly believe that the president should sit down and restructure. And again, we should not be a country of too much complaints, because this has already happened. Let us now be focused on what are the solutions to this. There are countries which have been paying debts for as far as 50 and above years. So we should sit down as a nation and highlight the factors that will help us get out of this problem.
And the problem has been the timeline within which we need to pay up this, because the worry again is that there hasn't been clear-cut policies by the CS and the Doherty leads, and of course those who are at the helm of financially advising the president. And now again, what culminates into further worry, or even widens that particular gap of worry, is that the president appears to be shrouding all these affairs in secrecy when he was posed that question by a fellow journalist from the Nation Media Group, that is Mark Masai in Mombasa County. And when all this happens and there is a taxpayer who is deprived economically, there appears that it's going to cause more worry in the country. Why not come clear on these policies? Because at the moment, all the African problems appear to be opening floodgate for China to roll out its policy under this debt, and of course as a way of diplomacy, despite the warnings by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the United States of America.
I think the people who are advising the president also have a mistake, because in this, the president is trying so much to leave a legacy or so. What he doesn't know is that even when his term ends, these things will soon will soon start. They will be revealed. So it is for the president to stop, at least to stop defending these people, especially, let's say, like the Treasury, the Henry Rotich. Let the president come out and highlight these issues, so that we understand the mistake is not. The mistake is the people hired by him, the cabinet secretaries, and he shouldn't feel like the entire issue is about him. I think he's trying to defend his government so much, forgetting that there's a mistake which has been done. We have entered into a mistake of debt, and the only way is to try and find solutions.